Let me ask you something most nonprofit leaders never actually model out. If one of your top donors passed away this year, what happens to that revenue next year? Not in theory, not eventually. I mean specifically, what replaces it? Because in most organizations, the answer isn't clear. What we've found is this: most nonprofits are far more concentrated than they think. A relatively small group of donors is often carrying a meaningful portion of the funding, sometimes 25, 30, even 50% of total revenue. And on the surface, everything feels stable. The gifts are consistent, relationships are strong, the mission is moving forward. But underneath that, there's a timing issue that almost no one addresses, because these donors are not permanent. And when they go away, and they will, the revenue usually goes with them. Now, the assumption is often, well, that's what planned giving is for. Bequests, estate gifts, letters of intent. But here's the reality. Most of those, certainly a lot of them, are revocable, uncertain, and often never actually materialize. And in some cases, they're restricted. So what ends up happening is this: a donor passes away, the annual support disappears, and there's no real replacement for it. This is what we call donor continuity risk, and it's one of the biggest blind spots we see across organizations, not because people aren't paying attention, but because everything looks fine right up until it isn't. If you were to actually map this out and look at your 5, 10, maybe 20 donors and ask a very simple question: if any of these individuals or a group of them weren't here a year from now, what happens to that funding? Most organizations don't have a clear answer other than, well, hopefully our efforts will replace them. And it's not because they're doing anything wrong. It's because the system they're operating in was never designed to solve that problem in the first place. So the real issue isn't fundraising. It's not even donor relationships. The real issue is whether your funding is actually durable, because there's a difference between receiving support and securing it. The organizations that become truly stable over time, they move from hoping support continues to structuring so it does. And when you start to look at it through that lens, a different set of questions opens up. Not how do we raise more, or how do we find more people to replace those we've lost, but how do we protect what we've already built? How do we protect the relationships that we already have? How do we protect the commitments from those people? How do we make sure this support doesn't disappear when they do? How do we create continuity while the donors are still here and believing in our mission? And for a lot of organizations, this is something that's never actually been mapped out, not in detail, not structurally. So if you're hearing this and thinking, we haven't actually looked at it that way, here's what I'd suggest. Take a look at your top donors and just ask, if one of these or a handful of these relationships disappeared, what actually replaces it? Most of the time, that's where the gap shows up. So let me leave you with this. Most nonprofit leaders don't lose sleep because things look fine today. They lose sleep 5 to 10 years from now when they realize the funding they thought was stable was never actually secured in the first place. And by then, the donors are gone, the revenue is gone, and there's no way to go back and fix it. So the hustle begins to try to replace it. That's why the better question isn't, are we doing well right now? It's, are we going to regret what we didn't put in place today? Because that's the conversation we hear over and over again from organizations looking back. So if you're responsible for the future of your organization, whether you're a CEO, a board member, or part of leadership, then this isn't something to casually think about. It's something to actually look at. And if you haven't broken this down clearly, where your funding is concentrated, what disappears if it's gone, and what, if anything, replaces it, then you're making decisions without seeing the full picture. If you want to walk through that, not theoretically, but specifically for your organization, reach out to me. We'll show you exactly how to map it out, where the real risks are, and what organizations are doing to fix it today while they still can. I'll leave you with this quote. How many nonprofit leaders and board members wish that their predecessors had planted the seeds for endowment growth a decade ago? Well, now you're that leader.